What's going on, guys? So in this video, I decided to do something different for my channel. Instead of reviewing a newer film, I decided to review an older film. And that's something I've been planning to do for my channel for quite some time. Review older films that are favorites of mine. And the first one I decided to go with was Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, directed by Edgar Wright and based off of a series of books by Brian Lee O'Malley. And it is about Scott Pilgrim, played by Cera, who is a part of a band that's trying to get on top and be a part of the big leagues. And then he runs into this new girl in town named Ramona Flowers, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and decides to date her, but soon finds out that she has 7 evil exes that want to kill her, and the only way that he has to continue to date her is to defeat them and win her heart. And it's done in the retro video game style, so just for this video, I decided to wear this shirt because I thought it would be appropriate for this movie. Now, I am going to get into some spoilers, so if you have not seen Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, that's your warning. Then again, this movie has already been out for 13 years, and a lot of people have already seen this film. But I still have to make this warning because there are still not a lot of people that have seen this movie yet. This movie came out in the summer of 2010, and when it first came out, it became a box office bomb. I mean, critics and audiences still liked it, but it still didn't make as much money as it should have gotten. And over the years, it has become a fan favorite for a lot of movie lovers. I remember my dad renting the DVD of it from Redbox back in 2010, and when he watched it, he thought it was a very cool video game movie. And I remember watching the film for the first time thinking, it's still fun, I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, it didn't really connect with me as much when I was like, I think 13 when I first watched this film. I mean, I was younger back then and I was still learning to love film more. But the main reason I didn't really connect with it is because I thought it was weird and confusing, and I didn't know who Edgar Wright was back then. This was basically my first film of his. Until I watched Shaun of the Dead for the first few times, and I ended up loving that film more and more to the point when the credits started playing, I would see Edgar Wright's name, and that's when I started taking notice of Edgar Wright. And then went back to Scott Pilgrim, and when the opening credits were playing, directed by Edgar Wright would play in the beginning of the film, and that's when it started to fully connect with me, and that's when I started to learn more about Edgar Wright as a filmmaker. And then I watched the film again and again and again, to the point where I start to remember more of the references that this movie pays homage to in some of the retro video games, with the sound effects and the little music that those games would play, to the point where it became one of my favorite movies of all time and one of the first few films where I took notice of Edgar Wright. This movie has a lot of references to classic video games that only hardcore video games will get, like some of the sound effects or like some of the certain little tunes this movie would play, or some of the t-shirts that some of the characters would wear. Even the opening Universal logo has that feel when it's all pixelated and the Universal theme sounds like it came out of an arcade game. And if you love moments like that, then you are gonna love them in this film if you haven't seen this movie yet, which if you have not seen Scott Pilgrim yet, then what are you doing? Go watch it. It's on Netflix right now while I'm making this video. Cera is Cera in this film. He plays a very shy and quiet type of character that he's known for playing in movies like Superbad or shows like Arrested Development. But I actually think that works here because it does kind of help the character be less obnoxious and less unlikable than the character already is. And he's not the greatest with women. Like, there'll be some that'll come into his life that he likes for a while, but then some of them will have a grudge against him because of a huge mistake he made. And there will be some women that would dump him and become his rival for his band. And that's mostly because he's always screws up in every relationship that he is in. But when he runs into Ramona, he thinks that she might be the one for him and will actually go and fight all 7 of her evil exes so that they can continue to date. Speaking of Ramona, played very well by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, she's basically a character that the main character has to rescue from the main villain, so she's kind of like a mix of Princess Peach from the Super Mario games and Zelda from the Legend of Zelda games, but a bit more down to earth. But the catch for her is that she's had a troubled past with all of her exes and hasn't found the right one for herself until she meets Scott. There's also some characters like his band, like the lead singer Stephen Stills, who is constantly concerned about their band not growing and not being on top like he wants them to be. Kim, a drummer and an old girlfriend of Scott who has a serious grudge against him. And young Neil, who's really just there to be one of their only audience members and to take over for Scott when he's out. There's also his roommate Wallace Wells, who has some of the funniest moments in the entire film, and most of that is deadpan humor. Now let's talk about all 7 of Ramona's evil exes and how much fun they are whenever they come on screen to defeat Scott. Almost all 7 of these characters are really fun to watch with really entertaining personalities. There's Matthew Patel, an emo punk with mystical powers, Lucas Lee, a skater who later becomes an over-the-top action star, Todd Ingram, a bass player with Dragon Ball telekinesis and the power of vegan, Roxy Richter, an angry punk girl who Ramona once had an experimental phase with, the Katianagi twins, Scott Span's competitors for the big leagues, and the leader of the evil exes himself, Gideon Graves. They are so crazy and over the top with how they want to kill Scott just for Ramona, and they are really a lot of fun when they come on screen. Whether you have Chris Evans playing an over the top actor, some competition you are. It's called a grind, bro. I even have my own skate company. That's hilarious. Hilarious. Brandon Routh playing a Dragon Ball-like character with vegan powers. I can read your thoughts. Your will's broken. You're through. And Jason Schwartzman playing an egotistical jerk that's rich. You wanna fight me? For her? Okay, latest. This movie has a lot of over-the-top acting from most of the cast, and some people would say that's kind of bad and it wouldn't really work for them, but I think it works here because that's kind of what they were going for. Because this movie is basically an homage to things like video games, comic books, and anime, especially anime like Dragon Ball, where characters would say something very loud and over the top. And another thing I want to praise about this film are the editing and the visual effects. They definitely make the film feel more fast-paced with the transitions and with some of the action sequences feeling quick, and the text that they would use whenever Scott is fighting one of the evil exes in battle. This movie also has some really good music, and that's something that Edgar Wright is really well known for having in his films, having really catchy songs that do match for the story. But there's this one thing I do want to mention about this film that does bother me. In recent years, people have looked down upon this film because it has a very unlikable lead. And I do understand that criticism, but I don't quite agree with that because that's kind of the point, because he's like that in the comics and it's part of his character arc. And in case you don't know what that is, the movie starts off with this character in one place and then it ends with him or her in another. You learn more about this character and why he or her is flawed. He or she becomes more mature throughout the film and becomes a more likable character. Now, yes, Scott is a bit of a jerk and he makes a lot of mistakes throughout the film, but he does learn from them by the third act. And part of that is him believing that he's following a fantasy by thinking that Ramona might be the one for him and thinks that he's really fighting for her. But after getting stabs Scott in the back, killing him, he wakes up in limbo. Then you see him realize that she's not really the one that Scott's fighting for. Then when he comes back a second time to fight Gideon, he finally decides that he just wants to fight Gideon for himself, giving him the power of self-respect. And it makes it a lot more engaging when you see Scott learn that. Plus, it's also the fact that Gideon's kind of a much bigger jerk than Scott is. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is one of the best movies of all time for both video game fans, anime fans, comic book fans, and music fans. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and every time I watch it, it never disappoints me. And if you've never seen an Edgar Wright film before, then I do recommend starting with either this film or Shaun of the Dead. Both of these two films are a great start for your Edgar Wright journey. Now, I will admit that this movie's not going to be for everyone because the plot for this film is really ridiculous. Like, a guy has to fight all 7 of evil exes of the new girlfriend that he's with, and it's done in this video game style. And I can understand why it's not for everyone, but for me, if it didn't have this whole cast and Edgar Wright didn't direct it, and if they got some like lesser known director to make this film, then this would have been like a pretty bad movie with some stuff that just wouldn't even work at all. But the movie definitely has that talent. It's a lot of fun to watch, and it never gets old for me. I'm gonna give Scott Pilgrim vs. the World an A+. So guys, the new Scott Pilgrim anime series is coming to Netflix pretty soon, and that's why I decided to review this film. And hopefully that show is a lot of fun, and hopefully as fun as the movie itself. So guys, I wanted to make this a new thing for my channel. I am still gonna review newer films, don't worry, I'm still gonna do that. But I do want to every once in a while review an older film that I loved watching over the years, and I've been wanting to review it ever since I started this channel. Whether they are older films I want to review just for fun, or they're films that relate to a newer film or a new TV show that's coming out. So guys, if you have seen Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, what did you guys think about it when it first came out and over the years? Do you think it's a classic, or do you think this is an overrated piece of garbage and shouldn't exist? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this review, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I am posting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.